Procrastibators, and welcome to another episode of Procrasturbate Tech. What are we doing today? Well, we're going to look at my childhood Nintendo 64. This is going to be a multi-part series because, well, I actually don't know what's wrong with it at the moment. Well, as you probably already know, if you've watched the GameCube video, of course, I recently-ish came across my old childhood Nintendo 64, as well as my childhood GameCube. Well, we've already done some repairs to that GameCube and done some modifications to it. What I wanted to do is I wanted to get this Nintendo 64 back up and running. Now, I think it was built in about 96, if memory serves. I probably received it, or me and my younger siblings received it around 96, maybe 97 as a Christmas gift, which is, interesting because it's coming up to Christmas quite shortly. Either way, it's a number of years old, so I really don't know what condition that it's in inside. What I wanted to do in this episode is pull apart the power supply, and also pull apart the only remaining controller that I have of it, so I can get a look inside, see if anything's amiss, broken, some capacitors have vomited, who knows. I just wanted to give it a once over to see what it's like, and then if everything's looking okay, I wanted to power it up and see if I could get any of my games working. So as you know already, I came across this hidden out in a sea container infested with bees a little while ago. In addition to finding the console itself, I also found a heap of games as well as one of the controllers. Now, the controllers are pretty notorious for the little joysticks in them going bad. As you'd probably expect, this one certainly has. So that's something that I definitely know I'll need to tackle. The other thing, as I said, I wanted to check for is just to make sure that none of the capacitors have gone bad, that there's no corrosion or anything else nasty or any insects on the board that might cause a short circuit. And I also wanted to make sure that the power supply was up to the task. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull that power supply apart, give it a once over, just make sure that all the capacitors look okay. I have heard in forums that generally the power supplies are pretty robust, so I'm not expecting anything. But if I do find any popped caps, it'll at least give me a list of things that I need to buy for it. So let's get started. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to do is undo the 4 game bit screws. Once those screws are gone, you'll be able to split apart the power supply case. Now, it will take a tiny bit of force to get that open. And once that case is open, you'll be able to remove the power supply PCB. Now, the transformer on the PCB has a bit of double-sided tape on top, so it will take a bit of force to get the board out as well. Hopefully the tape will have disintegrated enough so it doesn't take too much force. Once that's out, we'll give it a quick once over, see if there's any bulging capacitors, scorch marks, or anything else suspect. And taking a look at it, nothing here to see. It looks all good. The capacitors aren't bulging, nothing seems to have leaked in here, doesn't seem to be any water ingress or scorch marks or anything, so I'm pretty satisfied that this is going to be safe to use. Well, except for the power cord itself. Looks like there are a few teeth marks in this power cord, so although I don't quite see any of the internal insulation damaged, I think I'm going to try and get hold of a replacement for this power cable. So at least it's only clipped on. This will be nice and easy to replace, hopefully. Okay, so as you can see, the power supply seems to be okay. Didn't notice any capacitors bulging, didn't notice anything dead or weird or scorched or wonderful on the power supply. Off camera, I did actually check all the voltages that were being supplied by the power supply, and everything seemed to look in spec. So I'm not too afraid of reassembling this and plugging it into the console. Next up, I'm going to pull apart the console and do the same inspection. Make sure everything's okay. Give it a once over to see if any of the capacitors have blown up or done anything stupid, and to make sure that there's no insects on the board. Once I've done that, I'm going to give that board a bit of a clean because, as you can see, there's a lot of dust on this console. It has been sitting around for a while. Not to mention I was pretty young when we owned it. Some of my brothers who are younger than me. Yeah, we didn't treat this thing probably as well as an adult would these days. So yeah, we'll give it a look, give it a clean, and make sure it's ready to run. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tear down the Nintendo 64 console. So to start with, we just need to get all these screws off from the bottom. Once we've got all the screws off, we need to remove this piece of metal. So there is quite a number of screws here to get rid of. We'll use a Phillips head. Then we'll remove another piece of metal. Now that's off, we can see the motherboard. We'll need to remove the screws from the two connectors, so the power connector and the video output connector, so we can get the board off. And that's the board off. Now onto the plastics. First off, I want to get rid of this plastic frame that's sitting around the cartridge port, and I also want to take the flaps out. So I'll unscrew these two screws. And the flaps will fall straight off. Power switch and the reset button are easy to remove. Although taking a look at that reset button, it has seen some wear and tear. There must have been some dirt caught underneath, maybe even some rocks. Both of these just pop off with a couple of clips. And that's it for the console. I can't see any damaged capacitors on the main board. No scorch marks, nothing looks like it's corroded either, and it doesn't look like there's any dead insects. So I think we're pretty safe to whack this back in and give it a shot. Well, look at that. No blown up capacitors, no scorch marks, no funny business. So it looks like the main board of the console will be okay as well. So it's turning out to be rather boring, isn't it? Yeah. Next up, just going to give it a quick clean. It's going to be isopropanol alcohol as well as some contact cleaner. Then we will move on to the controller, pull that apart, see if there's anything else broken in there that we can identify other than the little joystick thing. So let's go. Nice and simple here. I'm just going to use isopropanol alcohol to clean off the board. Then I'm going to scrub it down with a toothbrush just to get any debris, dirt, or anything else that might be on the board. After that, I'll spray all of the connectors with deoxit or some sort of contact cleaner just to make sure that they're nice and clean and ready to go. Let's do it. Like most 64s, this controller has a bit of a problem with the joystick. Plus, from years of use, it's looking a bit grotty. So we'll start by tearing that down too. First off, we're going to remove all of the screws from the bottom. Oh dear, looks like one of these screws is threaded. Oh well, we'll have to pull it out. Don't forget there's a couple of annoying screws in the controller pack slot. You'll need an even smaller Phillips head to get to these. Whoops, looks like I missed a screw. Now that's done, the controller will split apart. I'm just going to go ahead and remove any parts that are falling out. Oh look, a piece of broken plastic, great. To get the PCB out, I'm going to have to remove the screws for the joystick. And the joystick comes out. And so does the rest of the PCB. Now I'm just going to remove all of the buttons and the membranes for those buttons. I've got to remove the Z button PCB off the joystick, and then I can remove the joystick itself. The joystick has a little connector on it. And I'm going to dismantle the little joystick because I'm sure there's years and years of gross build-up sitting inside that. To do that, there's one screw and 2 clips. And I'll undo all the fiddly bits. Oh, and yeah, that's disgusting. Right, all of this needs to go into the wash with the rest of the Nintendo 64 case. So far, so good. This is going to turn out to be a very boring video because nothing's broken, which, let's face it, it's very unusual. It's looking good inside the controller. The main board is all clean and tidy now. Hopefully that's gotten rid of any dust and anything else that might be on there, which is what I wanted to do. The only problem with the controller was that little bit of plastic that was broken, but I'm not even sure if I'm going to be able to fix that. And one of the screws was threaded, which is something that I can definitely try and fix, but considering how many screws are in there, I'm not sure it really matters. But anyway, who cares? Next up is just to clean all of those plastics and work out what I'm going to do with this thing. All the plastics are now cleaned up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to try and fire this console up with a game and see if anything actually loads. So I'm going to get the motherboard back on the bench and see what we can do. Wish me luck. Now that the mainboard's been checked out and I can confirm that there's no leaky caps in either the mainboard or the power supply, I thought it would be time to power it up and see if it actually works. So I'll just connect everything up. And I'll get a cartridge, one of my old favourites, Diddy Kong Racing. Let's see what happens when we switch it on. Not much by the looks of it. Well, that's a pain. Alright, well I'll try one more cartridge and see how this goes. Oh, and we have life. Excellent, it's working. Unfortunately, it also means I might have a couple of dead cartridges. Or I have a dead cartridge slot, I'm not sure which yet. Yes, I'm going to have a look at both of those. Well, finally, we found something that was actually broken. Or at least I think it's broken. I'm not actually quite sure what's broken. Either the edge connector, the slot thingy that you shove the cartridge into, either that's busted, or I've got a couple of broken cartridges. Now, we got one of the cartridges working, and look, admittedly, I do have quite a few there, but I haven't tested all of them yet because, well, I just haven't had a chance. But yeah, it seems one of my favorites, the Diddy Kong Racing cartridge, certainly didn't work, which is disappointing. So I'll have to take a look at them. I might save that for another video because I might go through all of my cartridges and see which ones are working, which ones are not. But as for the console itself, it appears the console is actually working. So there's not going to be a hell of a lot for me to do on this one. I'm not going to reassemble it just yet because, as I said, I'm not quite sure what I want to do with this console. One thing is for certain, I want to try and get better video output from it. I am considering getting, somehow putting together an RGB mod for it. I would love to get the Ultra HDMI mod for it, but, well, they're as rare as the wood of Jesus Christ's own cross. The RGB mods seem a little easier to get hold of. So that's definitely going to be something that I'm going to put an order in for. The next thing is the controller. As I said before, the little joystick thing is busted. I don't think it's worth trying to repair it myself. It seems only around 20 Australian bucks to actually replace it with something that actually looks decent. I also saw online it was a GameCube style replacement that slots in there instead. On top of that, I have seen Nintendo 64 controllers refurbished going for around the $35 mark. So I'm even tempted to just go with one of those. Although it would be worthwhile getting my controller back up and running. So I might do both. I might get a spare and I might do that. Hell, I might even buy a Bluetooth adapter so I can benefit from 21st century technology rather than having to plug in a big old cable. As for the power supply, the electric mains cable on the power supply had a few chew marks. Fairly certain that was from a pet dog. I think it would have been our pet dog, Washy. Been a few years since I've seen him. So that's definitely going to need replacing. So I'm going to source one of those. As for the case itself, now I'm in two minds of what to do with the case. So I could try and polish up the existing case, get it all nice and clean, and, restore it to its former glory. I'll need a new cover for the RAM Terminator. But I'm also thinking, I have seen on AliExpress some translucent cases for relatively cheap. The cheap bit worries me because, well, cheap plastics always worry me. But, the plastics that Nintendo used in the console anyway, pretty fragile anyway, so I'm not sure that they could be significantly worse. But who knows? I'm umming and ahhing whether or not I try and turn this into a nice, decent, not a museum piece. I don't think it's ever going to be that good, but leaving it in its former glory, or whether I go back to my 9-year-old self and basically turn this into like the coolest, or at least in, my 9-year-old self's opinion, the coolest Nintendo 64 console out there. And then maybe change the LED glow just to, make it even cooler, put it in a translucent case and all that jazz. So haven't quite decided what I'm going to do there yet. When I do decide, I will be placing an order online, get all the parts, get them here on my desk, and then I will be putting it all together in a part 2 video. So if you have any suggestions on how I should mod this console and which way I should go, please drop a comment. Be appreciated. Otherwise, you can go online and drop me a toot, I think it's called. I have a Mastodon profile now. So yeah, I stopped playing with Twitter because of the whole crazy Elon Musk thing. So it's on, oh God, what is it called? My Mastodon profile is on bitbang.social. I'll put a link in the description. Bitbang.social is hosted and maintained by Action Retro Guy, Sean. Awesome guy he is. But yeah, I am Procrasturbate at bitbang.social if you want to add me and hit me up there. Otherwise, you can go on to procrasturbate.net and shoot me an email from there. But I would love to hear your thoughts on what I should do to this console. Any suggestions would be appreciated. If you want to be a sugar daddy and get me an Ultra HDMI mod, I'll be very, 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 very appreciative of that. And yeah, I would actually like to get hold of one, but rare as rocking horse shit. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Hold out for part 2. Do the usual thing, like it if you like this video, hit subscribe if you want to be notified of the second video coming. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.